Vijay, and wonderful to be here again this year. It's been amazing how many conversations and comments around the talent challenges that come along with this new technology revolution. So what's wonderful here is this panel is made up of basically our partners. For those of us who come from the technology world, are human resource partners that we have to work very closely with on this challenge. So I'd like to introduce Becky House, who's the Senior Vice President, Chief People and Chief Legal Officer with Rockwell Automation, and Imtiaz Shaikh, who is the Deputy Chief Human Resource Officer with Hitachi Limited. Please come up on stage. Thank you. Okay, so the topic of the day seems to be talent, right? It's no longer about digital transformation. I think we've kind of cleared that hill. Now we're talking about talent. Comments today multiple times about this is a general purpose technology. I'd like to start by hearing both of your individual reactions to that, but maybe as important is you run in circles with your HR colleagues through your associations and industry groups. What is the general opinion of the Chief Human Resources Officers about the challenges that's coming with a general purpose technology?
Yeah, it was fascinating sitting and listening to all the other panels, and it was talent, people, how are we addressing this issue through all of it? So, to answer your second question first, right, I mean, it's top of mind, right? I think from an HR perspective, our focus is always around what are the skills that we need to drive the company's strategy? What do our people need to do? What are the cultures that we have to have? And the speed of change and how rapidly we've seen change, right? I was reflecting back on, how do we all have to learn to use new technologies when we sent workers home, right? An implementation of Teams and Zoom and what do we have? I think the need to think about how do we train and provide opportunities to people, how do we educate people in a world where the speed of technology changes and the need to stay up to date on them is coming faster and faster. And I think it's even more foundational when you think about our educational systems. Folks coming out of colleges, universities, you don't have the skill set that you're going to need forevermore. What do you need is base foundational, but how do we think about continuing that education, the aptitude, making it accessible in whether it's bite sizes or speed dating rounds to really get people what they need. So it's top of mind and a lot of conversation and focus on it within the HR communities.
Sure, and I think I echo pretty much everything that Becky said. If we look at Hitachi and how we follow, actually from the human resources perspective, we try to align our human portfolio and our culture to the business direction, right? And I think it's a function of how quickly we can get the organization to adapt to the change and how we can make them comfortable going through that change. And that has been tested quite well in the last 3 years with the pandemic and how we rewired ourselves to work and still be productive, right? So I think the biggest challenge, in my opinion, right now is that can the organization environment allow us to adopt new technology with the speed that market expects us so that we don't fall behind, right? So that is something that is in the forefront of our mind.
So I have a question, right? Because this concept of how do people evolve and progress at the speed of technology is changing is not a new topic for us. Mm-hmm. Do you think we're better equipped to it after what we've been through with the pandemic and that people were thrust into having to use this where maybe before they could ignore it? Are we better prepared to be more agile as organizations?
I don't know if it was just the pandemic, but I think about things, and you talk about general purpose technology, right? I might be going out on a limb here and saying I think I'm probably the only philosophy, political science, JD in the room, right? Like, I'm not the deep technologist. And I, have 3 sons at home, and I think about my kids and the world in which we live in with the ubiquity of smartphone technology and what humans get their brain around, and I look at my kids and what they're just used to in the world around us. And so whether it's coming out of the pandemic or the fact that the way technology has progressed in terms of the usability and the accessibility, and I think that humans have been really adaptable, and you see the ability to make things impactful very quickly. I think I think the mandate or the appetite for or the need for making sure we have systems that we can move quickly within companies, the pandemic exposed that, I think, to a certain extent more than we had. I think the kind of human capacity for quick change, but the business case behind, right, what do you need to be able to deploy quickly? How can you implement things fast? The pandemic exposed that, right? 10 years ago, I had gone in and sat around the boardroom with my board and said, here's what we need to plan for and invest in, right? Sending everyone home to work virtually. Do we have the IT systems? What happens with supply chain? They would have thought we were crazy, right? We're not going to spend money to do that. I think what the pandemic did is made apparent just the speed of change, how much it can come through, and making the business case readily apparent for the investments that you have to make now to enable and to make sure you've got the agility into the future.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think what pandemic did was just the step one of how you rewire quickly, right? And this was all about how we work with each other instead of office, but doing same job pretty much same way. I think what is coming up is job is fundamentally going to change. So the task I'm doing today might go away, but I might have to replace those tasks differently. And I think that change impacts individually, right? It impacts people's psychological safety to some extent to say, how will I make that transition? And what would be that next task that I need to put myself in? And I think that is something that will require people to get out of comfort zone, which is a good thing, because when it sets in, you just stop exploiting your potential. So I think this is where the next step of change is much more profound at individual level, but it's much more rewarding too if people make that journey forward.
Yeah, so Imtiaz, I'm going to ask you to build on that, right?
Sure.
So talk to me how you as Chief Human Resources Executive, right, the person at the organization turns to say, we need strategies for this. How do you think about it from the standpoint of, on Vector A, the upskilling
Sure.
of end users and
Sure.
the technology professionals, analogy used earlier, but then also the change management that the organization needs to put scaffolding around. How do you think about that, and then how do you talk about it in the executive suite?
So I think this is for Hitachi. I know Gajen was explaining earlier. We are not one company per se in many aspects, right? We have multiple different business units or industries where the maturity curve is different, right, in terms of change curve. So far, I mean, Hitachi's DNA, just to go back to where we are into IT sort of technology development and innovation for 80 years out of our 114 years. So this is not something new transition for us in terms of adapting new technology and leveraging for improving our products and our customers and our society contribution, right? On an individual basis, I think we have this challenge of, especially if you break that down in Japan, right? We have an issue of aging population that is going to exit the workforce. We have the country is shrinking from 125 million people today to 90 million in about 5 decades from now, right? So there is a labor shortage, and there are a lot of evidence that we see around macro level that supports the change that we need to make, right? And on an individual basis, I think we still struggle to adopt ERP and make that ERP processes more productive, right? And I think one of the positive things that we are looking forward from this technology is to get over that hump that everybody invested so much, but they're still questioning ROIs, right? The hardest question in front of CFO is, you gave me the ROI model, where is it now, right? And it's just very difficult to explain. So I think we are in this early stage of changing the organizational mindset. Our CEO, Kojima-san, has mobilized a task force to really understand what it would take for us to validate these technologies, its safety, its applicability, not only for our customers, but internally, right? And I think we are in these early stages of changing the culture, right? And one of the things that we started this year, not just because of AI, but in general, that Hitachi is globalizing, right? In last 5 years, we have added 80,000 people that were through acquisitions. So our culture is shifting tremendously from very strong Japanese heritage culture to now a combination of hybrid culture that is emerging. So to drive those changes, we are now studying to say how should we change? Should we change at a BU level, sector level, company level? So I'm coming from the corporate side. So we are looking at horizontal activities. One of them is driving our culture towards growth mindset and agility, right? Which is a fundamental change that we are making. What does it mean? How do you behave on agility? And one of those changes, our ability to learn new things and our ability to say, yes, we can, right? And not become more risk. And so I know it was a long answer, but it's really, we are looking at foundation level, and I think that will help us achieve
and that's why I wanted to ask a question, right? How about for Rockwell Automation? How do you think about upskilling the use of this new technology we have in our fingertips today and then impact on organizational change and culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those instances when you take a step back, it's everything has changed, but nothing has changed. Foundationally, kind of identification of what are the skills and attributes necessary to drive your company strategy, right? And so strategic workforce planning, understanding, right, what it takes for a company like Rockwell Automation in terms of, developing systems that are helping to manufacturers globally in a whole host of industries is very different than a business model. You think about a shoe manufacturer, a clothing manufacturer. You still have to break it down to what is the value proposition that your company has, what are the problems you're looking to solve for your customers, and then what are the skills that you need across the company in order to drive it. I think what's interesting about generative AI, I mean, AI has been something that has been embedded on our products, our people have been working with for a really long time. I think the distinction with generative AI is, as you saw, general purpose technology, everyone from my lawyers to my compliance people to my HR functions, right? The ubiquity with which it can be leveraged and used drives commonality of some skill sets across the organization that is more akin to, right, you need people who are good communicators. Are they good writers? Do you have good program managers? But I still think you got to look at it from both perspectives. Do you need people who are developing, designing, building the technology? Is it outward facing in terms of your products and services that you're delivering? Or are you talking about competencies with being able to interact with technology or leverage it internally? And you see the different business models. You talk about companies like Microsoft or big software companies that we run our systems on. They're building generative AI tools into those systems. I don't need my lawyers or my HR professionals to come up with a better way to do it. Microsoft and other companies are going to do that. But how do they interact with it? So I think there still is going to be a build-buy decision. And again, what are the skill sets people need? It's no different than, I was here way back when we didn't have word processors the way they worked, or your online technologies or the internet. They're tools that folks engage with, and what do they need to have for those skill sets versus do you have the builders of the tools? And so I still think you break it down to skills. It's skills identification across your population to then design what are the right training programs, upskilling, retraining, and doing it at the right size and scale that your organization needs.
In your respective organization, has the AI for augmentation of work versus automation of work bubbled up to the rooms of executive discussions that you're in?
Yes. Easy answer, right? Like, we're having the conversations. You heard from Chris, earlier, and the question of the, both and. It's creating those engaged user groups, right? Because ultimately, your people who know the best use cases for it need to understand what is the technology capable of or limited by. But your HR professionals, your lawyers, your IT folks are going to know the problems that they want to solve with it. That's very different than, your software engineers, your developers who are looking to apply it within a product offering. So distinguishing those things is a center part of the conversation.
And just as quick, and not afraid of both paths. Both paths are musts for the organization to succeed in the future and be competitive.
Given the business that we're in, I think it's yes. It's a both and, right? And I think, you see the numbers and the implications and the impacts across your workforce. Your opportunities for productivity to enhance what people are doing new and different ways. If you're not getting on the bandwagon to figure out how your folks can leverage it better, you're going to be left behind. And the ROI conversation, right? I think you're going to be able to identify really great use cases to say, we can do more, we can do better, we can do faster, which delivers a lot of value.
Yeah, I think I did mention that it has taken a very highest level of attention on where we can apply. At a functional level, I think we are also scratching the surface, right? Can I hire more people faster, better, but more without any biases, right?
And in the different countries in which you have employees, the cultural norms are very different.
Very different, right? So there's a lot of learning to be had, a lot of, trying and fail or trying and learning kind of thing that we need to put in place. And our academy, like we have a learning institute that has already introduced some of the early AI-related seminars, lectures, and courses, right, that are more for general consumption, not building AI per se.
So this is kind of like literacy?
Literacy to kind of get the basic level of competence in the organization, ready to be there, right? And I think we are kind of technology company, I would want to say, because everything we do has technology or digital aspect in it. So people are sort of eager to kind of learn more or apply towards more complex issues, right? And more complex challenges that we have. I mean, I saw Professor Vijay's Spanish skills, right? Now, in Japan, we end up translating everything because we have global organization. Sometimes we present in Japanese, and that gets translated in English, sometimes English into Japanese. Even these small little things can have a profound implication on how we move things in the company and how we accelerate communication or miscommunications a lot of times, right? So it's been seen as a very positive phenomenon for us.
Okay. One of the things that I've been doing for several years is actually growing the next generation of chief information officers. So I co-run an academy that basically teaches our up-and-coming technology leaders what it means to be a CIO, which has mostly to do with the soft skills that were talked about earlier today, the influencing skills, right? One of the things we talk a lot about is when you're trying to really move a strategy across an organization, you have to build a coalition of players to be with you in the conversation, who share your point of view, that you've molded their thoughts on the strategy with your thoughts. As the HR executive sitting in the room, who do you think about as your coalition partners on this topic that you have to be like-minded with and work very closely with to implement the strategies that your organizations need?
Everyone. Right? It's the entire leadership team. It's not a separate and apart. When I think about our company strategy and the way we work on it and design it at Rockwell, again, it's what's our value proposition, what are we looking to deliver, and you aren't looking at silos then of here's your piece, here's your piece, right? It's our business units. What are the financial implications? What are the people implications? What are the legal and compliance implications? It takes everyone in terms of driving the alignment and understanding the bits and pieces. You can't deliver an HR strategy that's independent from or separate and apart from the ultimate business goals of what you want to deliver. And so everyone understanding how they link together and starting with one and saying, okay, and now how does that influence and inform the where and what we have to go after? Because we ultimately want to deliver this as the end result. So I think you start with the organizational strategy and then all the bits and pieces have to come together. But it's everyone. It's our entire executive leadership team saying, yeah, here's what we need. And it's that iterative around, you might have many divergent different business units, but are there commonalities? Are there those themes that are scalable across the organization, right? Where's there the need to have consistency, continuity to scale and deliver, and only modify your approach when there's a compelling value proposition to do it, even across a diverse industry. But otherwise, it's broad alignment across all functions and business units in my mind.
Yeah, actually, just to add to that, that's absolutely needed because everything goes through people, right? So it generally, sometimes we think about people after the fact, sometimes in time, right? So just an example, I was talking to our chief scientist who is doing AI work in US. And I said, like, maybe he might educate me a little bit more before I come here in this conference. And I talked to him about people aspect, and he goes like, wow, please tell me what you learned because I haven't thought about it, right? So I think there is a need for us to bring people aspect in place. But just to add to your stakeholders, what I have found recently that works really good is we don't have all the answers, right? So generally going directly to employees sometimes gives you a better perspective. And it's not rocket science, this is pretty simple, right? But I think what I have found out is going and doing these sort of brown bags and some of these, what if kind of discussion. You get a lot of intelligence, right? That guides you to the realistic, pragmatic solutions as we move forward. So I think we must engage our employees in this journey because this journey is definitely going to help them, but we will need them with us to make that change. So I would expand a little bit more than just the influencer at the top, but also I would say bottoms-up influence is also very important.
Okay. We're out of time for today, but I want to please help me, join me in thanking our panelists today.